Good. Well, it's evening here. Good evening, girls. It's good to see you. It's good to see that you're all creating the time. I really never know how many girls are going to sign in, but the number is quite impressive. And today we're going to be having a very special guest, Adia Onyango, and she will be she will be training us on, well, she's going to tell you what she's going to be doing. But yes, you know very well that this program is going to expose you to different ladies who are high-level chess players all over the world. And each and every one will come with their own way of training. And so it's nice to see that you're so receptive. And yeah, I think I will allow Adia to introduce herself and introduce her topic so that I don't take the rug from her. Welcome, Adia. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Yes, of course. And I can also say a few words about Adia just so she doesn't have to brag about herself as much, although I'm sure she's okay at that. Adia Onyango is a great chess player, but even more importantly, a great teacher and a great advocate for the game. She's always trying to push chess to more girls. She's got a very big Facebook group called Women and Girls Play Chess Too. She organizes women's chess tournaments and brunches. She's the committee head of the U.S. Chess Women, and she's also has some Kenyan heritage, which she's going to tell you about. She's nicknamed the Chess Traveler because she goes all over the world to play chess tournaments, not only just to get some good games in, but also to learn about different cultures and people. So it's just great to have you here, Adia, and I'll let you introduce your topic.
Very good. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. First of all, I am so excited to be here with all of you guys today, and really excited to talk chess, one of my favorite topics. As Jennifer said, I'm actually from, my family originates from Kenya, from Fungano Island, and you know, my first generation born here in the U.S., and really enjoy whenever I fly home, go home, and visit. And when I do, I always try to fit in some chess when I can. It's not always an easy thing to do when you're coming home to see family. But today I wanted to share with you girls, talk to you girls a little bit about how I got into chess and, you know, what some of the things that I did, to improve in chess. Okay, so I'm going to start with our first poll because as I talked to you about how I got into chess, I wanted to learn a little bit about how all of you got into chess. Okay, now I learned chess actually from my best friend in school. And so I was lucky. And one thing I always encourage everyone to do is if you don't have friends who play chess, teach your friends chess. And you have an automatic study buddy, automatic person that you can study with. My friend taught me how to play chess. And now to this day, I'm still playing. We're still friends. She doesn't play anymore, actually. So you never know who you can bring the world of chess to. Well, some of the things, one of the biggest things that I did when I was younger to try to improve was going over my own games. How many of you guys raise your actual hand or virtual hand if you go over your own games? It's one of the strongest tools for improving because it lets you know what you need to work on. So I had a little bit of a method. I would go over my games with myself, and then I would go over my games with a stronger player as well, before I would ever put it in the computer and look at what the computer would say. So this is something, you know, we just launched another poll. If you can let me know, what do you do? What do you like to do? What do you like to spend your time doing when you're studying chess? Tactics, playing games, going over GM games, going over your games, videos, reading books. Just let me know what's your favorite thing to do when with studying chess. Let's see what we can find out. What's your favorite thing to do, Jen?
I think I like tactics. That's my favorite.
Yes, tactics. I will have to say the biggest, to see some of the biggest improvement, I would say tactics, tactics, tactics. You know, at least, even though my favorite thing is going over games, you know, as I was improving, I was spending at least an hour or more sometimes doing tactics puzzles every day. Even had a little notebook that I kept my puzzles in and kept track of my percentages, trying to keep my percentage over 80%. Over 80% of accuracy. All right, so I see here the most popular, it looks like the most popular for you girls would be playing games. Playing games. Yeah, playing games is a lot of fun, okay? And something that's really important, but really to bring our game to the next level, we want to make sure that we incorporate some of these other things as well. It's doing tactics, going over your games, watching videos, reading articles. There's so many things out there now that were not even out there when I was younger, that really can give us a leg up on trying to improve. So today, we're actually going to talk about one of my favorite topics, and you know, something that can help you young ladies to try to improve your game, and that has to do with something that's really important in chess, which is restriction of the mobility of your pieces. Okay, restriction of the mobility of your pieces. And what can anybody tell me what that means? What I mean by that? What does it mean to restrict a piece? What do you think, Bernice?
To restrict means the squares before the pieces you want to move. There are some pieces in front of those squares, so it doesn't allow it to move because there are pieces in front of it.
Beautiful, beautiful, exactly. Okay, that is one idea with restricting pieces, when you might have pieces in front of it that don't allow you to move the piece, okay? And we're going to look at a few examples of that. There are many different ideas when we come to the idea about restricting pieces, but in fact, the idea that Mary just shared is what we're gonna really focus on today, okay? I'm gonna share my screen with you quickly and see if anyone can tell me who this guy is.
I think it's Karpov.
Very nice. Excellent, excellent, Elizabeth. That's right. This is Anatoly Karpov, one of my favorite players. And he, you know, one of the reasons I really like him as a player is because of his style of play. He's a very solid positional player that really can thrive on restricting his opponent's pieces and taking away, really trying to get into his opponent's head and understand what their plan is and what they want to do. And for myself as a player, I actually, when I was younger, okay, before I ever even started studying the game on a serious level, that was actually my main strategy. Before I even knew what chess strategy was I always was trying to ask myself, what do I think my opponent is trying to do? Okay, so I was always trying to understand the plan of my opponent. Raise your hand if you try to do that. Raise your actual hand or virtual hand if you try to do that when you play your games. Do you try to think about what does my opponent want to do? Do you try to, does anybody try to? Very good, Valentine. Yeah, very good, very good. Is that Elizabeth? Very good, okay. Yeah, this is a really strong strategy, is to really try to think about what your opponent is trying to do. And this is something that Karpov did really, really well, okay. We're gonna talk more about this idea of restricting our opponent's pieces and basically taking away options from our opponent, okay? All right, so here in this position, this is a game that was played between Kramnik and Topalov. in 2008 in France. Okay, and you'll notice here when you look at the white and black pieces, they're not equal, right? One thing that's important in chess is to remember that it's not just about what you have, but what you're doing with what you have, right? So if we look at the amount of pieces on the board, right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 pawns for black, okay? And we also have 5 pawns for white. White has 2 bishops and 2 rooks. Black has a rook and a knight. In this position, who do you think has a better position and why? Okay, raise your actual hand, a virtual hand. Who do you think has a better position here and why? What do you think? Is that
Yes.
Savida? Let's see, can we unmute? I could not. Are we able to unmute Savinda?
Yes,
All right, go ahead. Who do you think has a better position?
I think white has a better position
Okay, why? Why do you think white has a better position?
because he has the black pieces are not well kept because he can, like for now, he can sacrifice the rook to take the knight for the bishop to have a space.
Beautiful, beautiful, exactly right. Okay, so immediately you see the response of rook takes knight and allowing the bishop to come over. Okay, now when we look at this position and we think about how they got to this position and we look at the mobility of the pieces, which side has better mobility? Whose pieces have better mobility, can move about more freely, white or black? Okay, go ahead, Mary.
I'm not sure I'm right, but I think black has better mobility.
Okay. Now, I always say, one thing I always say is we want to always check our answer, right? So we have our opinions, and then we have to get in the analysis, we get at the truth of the position. So let's see, Mary, if that is the truth. Let's compare the pieces. So first, let's look at this rook, and let's compare it to this rook, okay? Which rook has more squares that it can move to, okay? Where can the black rook move to? Who can tell me what square can the black rook move to? Raise your actual hand, the virtual hand. Bernice, I think you have your hand up. What square can the black rook move to?
The black rook can move to A8.
A8. Anywhere else?
Only A8 because
Only
the
A8.
rest of the places the rook is protecting and the bishop.
Very nice, very nice. So Bernice, which rook has more mobility right now?
The white rook.
So the white rook has more mobility than the black rook. Now let's compare the queen, okay? Let's compare this queen to this rook, since white doesn't have a queen, right? Which piece has more mobility, this queen or this rook? What square can this queen move to safely? What square can this queen move to safely? Raise your actual hand or virtual hand. Is that Elizabeth?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. You can unmute yourself, Elizabeth.
Okay. Me, I think the rook is better because the queen has no place to go.
No place to go. Okay, very good. Notice, we would think, it's very easy to think that black has a better position here because black has a queen, right? But in fact, this queen cannot move anywhere. It's completely restricted by white's pieces. It can't move here because of the rook. It can't move here because of the bishop. It can't move here because of the bishop. And it can't move here because of the bishop. So in fact, this queen is really powerful, but remember, okay, it's not about what you have, but what you can do with what you have. And right now, black cannot do anything with this queen, okay? And so we just have the knight, okay? And if we compare the knight to this bishop here, which piece is stronger, the bishop or this knight? Which one has better mobility? Bernice? All right, Bernice, you can unmute yourself.
The white bishop.
Yeah, the white bishop. Okay, notice the white bishop has more squares that it can move to, and it's controlling 2 diagonals. Okay, commanding a lot of space on the board. Okay, so right away we see, even though black has the queen for the against the 2 rooks, white's pieces have so much more mobility here. Okay, and so in the game, in fact, Toplar played rook to a8, the only move that can be played, and as was suggested by one of you, the next move to be played is rook takes knight. And just like that, the game is over. They resign because, of course, they are looking to checkmate in the next move, okay? So we see how powerful it can be to have your pieces that are really mobile and doing a lot. All right, we're going to stop this. And we're going to look at actually 2 games. One of a favorite game of mine that I actually called Frozen. All right, I called this game Frozen because one thing that I really love to do in my games, I get immense joy when I'm able to take away squares from my opponent, when I'm able to actually freeze their pieces where they cannot move. And this was something I loved to do when I was younger. Didn't know that it was actually a strategy, okay? But this was something I used to love to think of ways to take away squares from my opponent's pieces, all right? And so over time, I have tried to improve in using this strategy. So we're gonna look at this game that I played. So we're going to just go through this game. It started with this game I played in a tournament in Boston in 2015, I believe. And this started with a standard. Does anybody know what opening this is? Okay. Does anybody know the name of this opening? This is called the Queen. Go ahead, Bernice.
Queen's Gambit.
That's right. Very good. Okay, and although in this tournament I decided to play this a little bit differently, and I did not take the deep pawn, which I sometimes do capture. And instead, I wanted to play with the theme of trying to really restrict my opponent's pieces and trying to gain more space, okay, against my opponent. Okay, and so now here in this position, both sides have castled. We're going to, Jennifer, if we can put up question number 2 or number 3. And I want everyone to try to evaluate this position, okay? And share with us if you think this position is equal. It's very early in the game. If black is better or if white is better. What do you think in this position? Okay. Now, sometimes this early in the game, it can be really difficult to try to come up with an evaluation of a position when not much has happened. But in fact, a little bit has happened in this position that might sway us one way or another in evaluating this position. Okay, why don't we have some volunteers if you want to share your thoughts with the group, whether you think as the poll is going on, let us know what you think. Who wants to share with the group what they think of this position? Is it equal? Do you think black is better? Do you think white is better? Raise your actual hand or your virtual hand.
White is better in the
Why do you-
position because they've taken more space from their opponent.
Okay, very good. So you feel white is better because you're looking at space. Interesting. What do you think, Elizabeth? You
He
can.
said what I wanted. I wanted to
She's-
say white is better because white took space and his pieces are active, including the rooks.
Okay, very good. So white has better activity with their pieces as well. Okay. Yeah. So you guys have named two advantages for white. Okay. You said that white has more space and has more activity. Okay. Remember, when we're looking at positions, material is just one form of one thing, variable that we look at, right? But we look at all the advantages and all the disadvantages to try to assess an actual position. Okay. So with material, we would say this is equal, but with space, we notice that white is controlling more squares on black side of the board than black is controlling on white side of the board, right? So we see all of these squares that white is hitting on black side of the board. How many squares is black hitting? Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Much fewer squares for black than white. If we compare the red squares to the green squares. Okay, so we know, as Bernice said, when we get to the truth, that white has a space advantage. Okay, and then we said better mobility for white. Okay, let's see if that is true. Elizabeth, whose bishop is better? The bishop on C8 or the bishop on D3?
Me, I think is bishop on d3 because that bishop takes the diagonal on, yeah.
Yeah, very good. This bishop is hitting a lot of squares, whereas the other bishop is blocked by their own pawns and pieces, right? Has not moved yet. Very good. What about if we look at the knights? Whose knight is better? Whose knight is better? Alina, if you can unmute yourself and tell me whose knight is better, white or black's? So let's look at the squares that the black knight can move to safely and the squares that the white knight can move to. Whose knight is better, Alina? What do you think, Alina?
Black is better.
You think black's knight is better? Let's look and see. What squares can the black knight move to, Alina? What squares can this black knight move to? Can the black knight safely move here? Is this a safe square for this knight to move to, Alina?
No.
No, so can't move there because of the pawn, the knight, the bishop. What about here? Is this a safe square for this knight?
No.
What about this square? Is this a safe square for the knight? That one's a little bit tricky, right, Alina? Because the knight can move there, but it can be captured by the bishop. Is that what you're looking at?
Yes.
Yes. But it can move there safely since they're both worth 3 points, right? So the knight can move there since it's an equal exchange if they capture. All right, so this knight has 1 square that it can move to, okay? Whereas this knight has 1, well, can it move there safely? Elizabeth, can it move here safely?
No.
No, not really. 2, 3 squares that it can move to. So the knight has better mobility as well, right? Because the knight can move to, has a larger scope. What about the queens? What about the queens? Savita, which queen?
Onyango, can I ask a question?
Yes.
I want to ask a question. If the black knight, if the black knight plays at b6, it will be captured by the pawn, but the queen will now be able to come out Is that a good thing?
Yeah, well, okay, so when we think about the exchange of pieces, we have to think about the value, okay? And so we have to consider which is a more expensive piece if they're not equal. Oops, sorry, 1 second, let me go back. So in this example, if the knight was to move to b6, well, now it can be captured by the pawn, right? And who can tell me how many points is the pawn worth? Who can tell me how many points the pawn is worth? Raise your hand if you know. How many points is the pawn worth? Let's see here. A few people raising their hand. Let's go ahead to Elizabeth.
Oh, the pawn has 1 point.
And how many points is the knight worth?
3.
3 points, 3 points. Okay, so here, Mary, if we put the knight on b6, the problem is that even though the queen can capture back, we would be giving up the knight for 1 point. Does that make sense?
Yes, I got it. Thank you.
Very good. Very good. So we always have to be careful when we're looking at what squares we can move to. We always have to be careful and consider not only if we're defending that square, but the value of the piece, so that if it can be captured, the value of the piece. Am I giving up a more expensive piece for a less expensive piece? Okay. All right. So in this example, the queen, in fact, the white queen also has more squares to move to. Okay. The white queen can move. The white queen also has more squares that it can move to than the black queen. And even if we look at the rooks, okay, if we look at the rooks, whose rooks are more active, white or black? Whose rooks are more active, white or black? Raise your actual hand or virtual hand if you think if you have a suggestion. Whose rooks are more active? Let's see here. Let's see. Is this Valentine?
Oh, Valentine.
It's white roots because they're even double roots.
So they're connected. Very good. Something really important. I know last week you guys, last time you guys met a few weeks ago, you talked about getting those rooks connected. And here these rooks are connected, yeah? So that's so important as well, because then they're able to protect each other and have more squares that they can move to. Okay, very good. Whereas this guy cannot really move anywhere, and this guy can only move to 1 square. All right, so let's continue to see how the game went and whether or not we're able to take advantage of the space advantage and the fact that black pieces are restricted. Okay, so the game continued. Pawn to A5, pawn to A5. Now the question I have here is, would you capture this pawn or would you not capture the pawn? If you're playing the white pieces, would you rather capture the pawn or not? Abigail, what do you think? If you're playing the white pieces here, would you capture this pawn? Go ahead, Abigail, you can unmute yourself.
I will not capture the pawn.
Tell me why not.
When I capture, it will capture me with the rook or the queen.
Uh-huh.
And when it captures, I will only capture with my queen, and we will exchange the queens. And maybe you can want to checkmate with the queen. The queen is more helpful. So it's better not you capture.
So you're thinking you don't want to exchange material. Okay, that's very interesting. Okay, Abigail. And in fact, when your opponent's position is cramped, that's very true. You actually don't want to exchange material because you're helping them to free their position, right? Let's look and see also if we capture. Notice here, and they capture back with their queen. Notice how we have opened up the file for their rook. And now this rook that was once had no squares to move to now has, how many squares do we have here? Oops, sorry. Now has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares that it can move to, right? So by capturing, we help them to open up this position. And if we're trying to restrict our opponent's position, we don't want to help them to develop their pieces or to open things up. So I agree with you, Abigail. So instead, I push the pawn to b5, keeping the position closed and grabbing more space. Okay, and grabbing more space, restricting the queen even more. Notice the queen now has 1 less square it can move to. Now this queen can only move to how many squares, Hope? Hope, how many squares? Can you unmute yourself, Hope? How many squares can the black queen move to now?
She can move to,
Did you say 2?
no,
Okay.
she can move to 2 squares, 3 squares.
You said, you said 2? Yes.
3,
3? Are you including this square?
yes,
Okay, so it can move to 3, but how many of those are safe squares?
2,
2, very good. So when we think about where it can move, we always want to consider if it's a safe square, because of course, this move here, and this queen is in a lot of trouble. This queen is in a lot of trouble. I'll be very happy, okay? All right, so yeah, the queen now can only move to 2 squares, taking away even more squares from the king, from the black queen. And now white played rook to b1. Okay, rook to b1. Moving my rook to the file where it has more mobility. Do you have a question, Vanish? Vanshi? You can unmute yourself.
I wanted to make a suggestion.
Yes.
Before you could have started attacking the pieces so you can take center control.
Say it again, Vanshi.
You could have captured the pieces, the pawn, so you can take center control.
Ah, so you would like to push forward in the center?
Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting idea. What are some other plans that we have? So one idea is white might push pawn to e4, opening up the center maybe. Okay. Anybody have any other ideas? Well, how would you continue if you had white here? The beautiful thing about chess is that it's not just black and white with one answer. Our own creativity and ideas all come into play with thinking of plans and ideas. We want to look at the weaknesses in the position and see how we can take advantage of those weaknesses. Does anybody have any other ideas of how white can continue here? Raise your actual hand or virtual hand.
No, we have Mary and we have Abigail Onyango.
Okay, Abigail.
You move the rook on b1 to b3. When you move it, the black pieces will play. Then the pawn cannot move, so you capture. Then the rook will capture or get away with it. So you can remove the pawn out of there.
Very nice, very nice. So you already found a way to take advantage of the weakness and actually win material. Okay, very nice. That's a very nice plan. Does anybody see anything else? Any other ideas in this position?
What if you play bishop at g3, you play it to d6?
Very nice. Bishop to d6, creating a threat, attacking the rook, and repositioning our bishop to gain even more space. Okay, very nice, very interesting idea. I considered actually all of these ideas when I actually made my move and decided to go ahead with rook to b3 and just go ahead and collect my pawn that black has no way of defending. Okay. And now I had a decision of whether to go backwards or forward, and decided, that I wanted to go forward. Now, this was an interesting idea here. Taking with the pawn. Why do you think I captured with the pawn instead of capturing with the bishop? Can anybody notice I'm doubling my pawns, okay? And I'm making it so that my bishop no longer has this long diagonal, right? So what do you think my plan is? Why did I double these pawns? What do you think here? Raise your actual hand or virtual hand. Is there a reason? Is there any advantage to me capturing D takes E as opposed to bishop capture? And think about restriction of pieces. Let's see, I see a few hands up. Let's see, Vanchi, am I pronouncing your name correct? Vanchi, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
My name is Vanchi. It's not
Vanchi, very nice. Beautiful, go ahead.
okay. So yeah, it's good if you double up the pawn, because if the knight captures and you can't, because your pieces will become less, because you don't have support how the knight can capture the pawn, and if you capture the queen, your queen will be taken.
Okay, so very good. So the knight can't capture. If they do capture, they will be giving up a more expensive piece. It's defended, very good. Okay, anything else that anybody sees? Any other advantages of capturing? D captures E5. Any other advantages? Let's see, Valentine, you have your hand up.
When the knight captures the pawn, you capture with the bishop, then it will be a check. Then the king will move to, maybe he will move to G8, then you capture with the queen, then he'll go back, then you go checkmate to G7.
Very nice, interesting. So if they actually captured, then we would be able to capture here. I like the way you are calculating that all the way through, Valentine, okay? Now let's say if black doesn't capture, right? Because I think we all agree that we'll be very happy if they capture, but maybe they don't capture. What other advantage do you see of me taking with the pawn as opposed to the bishop? Bernice? You can unmute yourself.
Because you are threatening queen x g4 check.
Very nice. So I've opened up the fourth rank for my queen. Beautiful. And I'm threatening to capture with check. So that's one idea. Also notice that the pawn is also controlling more squares on their side of the board as well. So by me taking with the pawn, I did restrict my bishop, but I actually also opened things up for my queen to come into the fight, right? While their pieces are still very restricted and can't get into the game. Notice, by capturing with the pawn, I stopped the knight also from coming into f6. So right now, this knight can only go to one square, and that is b8, all right? So they did what they can to try to free the position and played f5, and I captured en passant. And just as Bernice said, then I was able to capture with check. Now having a 2-pawn advantage in the position and a safe queen and more active pieces. Notice every one of my pieces is active except for which one? Every one of white's pieces is active except for which piece? Raise your actual hand or virtual hand. Hope, which of white's pieces is not active? Not as active as the rest?
The pawn on A2.
The pawn on A2, okay. So when we talk about pawns, we say pawns, but if we think about the pieces, we're trying to compare the bishops, the queen, and the rook. Which of these has the least amount of mobility?
Excellent, sir.
What do you think, Hope?
The rook.
The rook, very good, very good. Okay. So here, white has a nice advantage and very active pieces. Whereas for black, black doesn't have any squares for the bishop, and is very limited for the knight. The knight now can move to 1 square, right? We can't move here because the bishop would capture, and we can't move here. Well, we can move here. We have 2 squares for the knight. All right, but first we have to deal with the check. So they moved out of check. And white played here. Did white just make a mistake? Did white just make a mistake and leave material for free? Let's see, what do you think? Did white just make a mistake? We're playing queen to h5. Look and see, we have to remember, chess is a conversation. So when your black makes a move, white responds. So we have to see, did white make a mistake by leaving this pawn to be captured for free? Valentine says no. What do you think? Go ahead, Valentine.
Because when the knight captures the pawn at d5, you take your bishop and place it at e5, pinning the queen and pinning the queen.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Went too far. So if the knight moves, we're able to win the queen, right? So they did not capture. Instead, they pushed the pawn. And we made an air hole for the king, forcing the exchange of some material. And now, white played bishop back. And we finally defended the pawn. But black has a little trick for white, all right? A little trick for white, which I wasn't so afraid of since I was up material. Notice the light square bishop never got into the game. Knight takes, and now it is white's turn. What can white play to restrict black's pieces? It is white to move, okay, and gain an advantage by restricting the pieces. Now remember, when we're thinking about restricting a piece, we can restrict a piece by taking away squares from your opponent's pieces. We can also restrict a piece by forcing your opponent to have to defend a square or material, okay? Because if they're forced to defend it, then that means they can't do something else, all right? So think about that when you are looking at what you think is the best answer here. Abigail, what do you think?
I think you can move the pawn or from f2 to f4. Then when it captures, you capture.
Okay. You capture with the pawn or the bishop?
You move the pawn.
Mm-hmm. And then after they capture,
then it captures. If it refuses to capture, you capture. Then the king will be under check. If it captures, then you capture.
Yeah, that's an interesting move, Abigail, and it surely will get some material off the board, right? And it will open up the diagonal for the bishop. Emmanuel Lasker says, when you see a good move, look for a better one. When you see a good move, look for a better one. So that's an interesting move, right? Because we open a diagonal for the bishop and we also attack an unprotected pawn, okay? Can anybody find another way to maybe attack unprotected material, restrict our opponent's pieces. Let's see, is there anyone who sees another idea? Savinda?
For me, I think the best move is to take the rook to b1.
Interesting. Share with us why. Why do you like rook b1?
The reason is to attack the piece at b7. Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. That is actually what I played. Rook b1. Very nice, Abigail. Looks like about 40% of you guys, a few of you guys, also agreed with Abigail. We'll end the poll and share it. Okay. A few of you guys agreed. Let's look at what that does. Notice rook to b1. There's only one way to defend the pawn, and how is that? What's the only thing that black can play to defend the pawn? Mashayo, what's the only thing that black could play? You can unmute yourself.
I think it's rook f7.
Very nice. That's what they played, rook f7. And notice after rook f7, now this guy has gotten restricted more. Okay? Can this knight move here? You can shake your head yes or no. What do you think? Is this a good square for this knight to move now? If you think yes, shake your head yes. If you think no, shake your head no. I see a few no's. Yes, Mashayo, yes. I agree with you. If the knight moves there, we now block the bishop. So this knight now only has one square to move to. Can you imagine? Black, notice, has not had a chance to move any of their pieces on the right side of the board. Okay? So black, the knight only can move here. Okay? And the rook has these moves, only has these moves to move to. The rook is now restricted to the 7th rank. Okay? So next I look to improve my pieces even more, bringing my rook with a rook lift to the 4th rank. And notice by bringing it to the 4th rank, I continue to put pressure on this pawn, and now my rook also has the ability to move this way. So increasing the mobility of my pieces. Rook d7, so that maybe so he can get his knight out. Pawn to h5, taking away yet another square from the king. Questionable move, right? This move, double edge, it blocks off my rook, but now it opens up my bishop, okay? And takes away more squares from black, okay? Forcing the king to run back. And notice now the king is restricted. The king is restricted to defending the pawn. The rook is restricted to defending this pawn, and this knight only has 2 squares to move to. Okay, now if they play knight to a7, let's make a few moves. Okay, if they play knight to a7, what can black play to restrict the knight some more? What can black play here to restrict the knight some more? If they play knight to a7, how do we restrict the knight some more? Raise your actual hand or virtual hand. Because I'm not going to let this knight into the game. I'm determined to keep their pieces out of the game. I'm the only one who wants to play here. Okay, let's see. Vanshi?
I would move my rook to a4.
Rook to a4, but does the rook a4 stop the knight from moving to this square? Can you find a move to stop, to discourage the knight from moving to this square a5 and getting in the game finally? What can we play to stop the knight from getting into the game here? Go ahead, Abigail.
Move the pawn to a4.
A4, whoever said, yes, beautiful. We could just move pawn to a4. So notice, even if they try to get in the game, we can stop them, okay? So in the game, they actually played rook over. And notice all they're left to do is move back and forth, okay? Let's see. And so now we continue to they're trying to get their knight into the game. And so we move the rook over. Notice by moving the rook over, we're taking away squares. We're continuing to restrict the knight, not allowing them to get their knight into the game. Okay? All right. And now who can find the final blow? What does white play here to again restrict the pieces and the final plan to win this game? Can anybody find the final blow here? How can we how can we continue restricting, maybe restrict this knight? Raise your actual hand or virtual hand if you think you see it. Mary, is your hand up?
It wasn't up for this one, but I would play rook. I'm not sure if it's right. I'll play rook at f8.
Beautiful, beautiful, exactly right. Why rook f8? What happens if the knight moves? What happens if the knight moves? Vanshi.
I would say if the knight would move f6, I would take the bishop and capture.
Okay, let's say the knight moves to e7. Knight moves to e7. What do we play now? Notice this king is also restricted. What would we play now? Elizabeth.
I will play rook on h8 checkmate.
Beautiful. Rook h8 checkmate. Okay, so notice white was able to just effectively restrict all of his pieces. The knight was restricted, the rook was restricted, the king was restricted. Okay, which is why at some point, and so white just continued with the plan to push the pawns. At this point, black resigned. Okay, because of the idea that white can just continue and push the pawn forward, forcing the knight to move or be captured, and the threat of checkmate, game over. All right, very nice. So here you see how we can, in a game, really use this idea of restricting our opponent's pieces at every phase of the game, okay? At every phase, when I have my opponent's pieces, when I have my opponent's pieces restricted, you want to really keep them restricted and keep your pieces active for the attack, okay? I want to, we're not going to go over the Karpov game today. I think we'll save that for another day because I really want to save some time for some questions and answers. But before we do that, let's look at a few more puzzles, okay? I'm just going to share my screen and go over a few more puzzles and see how you guys do with thinking about the restricted pieces in this position. So this was a game played between Kramnik and Spidler. Who do you think has the better position here, white or black? Whose pieces are more active? Whose pieces are more restricted in this position? Raise your actual hand or virtual hand. Let's see here. We have a few hands up. Let's try. Want to make sure we try to hear from everyone today. Veronica, are you there? Are you there, Veronica? Who do you feel has the more active position? Are you there? If so, you can unmute yourself.
Looks like Mutetia hasn't spoken today, might have an answer.
All right, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Black's rooks are more active than the white's rooks.
Okay, black's rooks are more active. They're doubled on the open file. Very good. Let's compare the bishops. What do you think? Raise your hand. Let's see, Abigail, you had your hand up. What about the bishops? Is black's bishop more active or white's bishop more active? What do you think, Abigail? You can unmute yourself.
I think it's the white because it's protecting the diagonal that is going to check the king. So when the rook is there to protect, you can go and check the king, but it's not the black that is more active.
Yeah, and very good point that it's attacking. Okay, the diagonal the king is on, and also notice that this bishop is blocked by white's pawns. Okay? Bishop has no squares; it only has actually one square that it can move to. It sounds like somebody might have to mute themselves. The bishop only has one square, so this guy is kind of imprisoned by white's pawns and the rook. Okay, so remember in your games, it's not just about what you have, but what you can do with what you have. Okay, you can have equal material, but if you can't move your pieces anywhere, then your position will sometimes be considered worse than your opponent's. All right.
I have a question.
Very good. I'm going to stop and pause to see if anybody has questions. I think is that you, Mary?
So I want to ask a question. So if I'm playing white, it means it will be ill-advised for me to move pawn E this the second white pawn E the pawn on the column E. It will be ill-advised to move it forward.
Move this forward?
Yes.
Well, that's an interesting plan. You do have to be careful of some tactics in terms of like rook over, but that you are going to want to move your pawns forward. This is an advantage. Maybe in this position, we might go with the idea of simplifying the position first, right? Since we already have this huge advantage of taking out this bishop, let's keep this bishop in prison first, and then we can just capture the rook, right? And after rook captures, they can capture either with the pawn or the other rook. If they capture with the rook, well, now we can just go head forward to get our queen, right? With not much way for them to stop us. Okay, but Mary, I think what you were getting at is if we push the pawn right away, that we're letting the bishop out. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that if we're doing it, we're doing that for a good reason, like that we're going to be soon queening, okay? But otherwise, we should leave the bishop in prison until we're ready to transfer one advantage for another advantage, okay? So maybe I first simplify the position, and then I can go ahead and push my pawns.
I got it. So basically what you're saying, sometimes in either restricting the movement or opening up, you can't do them. You have to do it. A system. You must follow some pattern. You don't just move. You'll make that move eventually, but there's a time for a certain move.
Yes. And what you want to remember is every time you make a move, it can yield advantages and disadvantages. Okay. So at the right time, moving this pawn forward will open up the diagonal for the bishop, okay? But it also will allow us to possibly queen or to fork the king and the rook, okay? So you want to think about the advantages and the disadvantages, and then you want to compare them and decide what's better, what's the better decision, okay? So the same thing that we want to do in life, we want to come up with our list out, brainstorm and come up with our advantages and disadvantages before we make any kind of decision. Yeah. Okay. So why don't we just pause for a minute just to see if we have any questions. You can ask questions about the topic for today, restricting the position, or about anything else as well. Do we have any questions? You guys, I want to thank you guys also. Great job with participation and activity today. Bernice, go ahead.
How old were you when you started playing chess?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I started playing when I was in junior high school, in 7th grade, in fact. But unlike all of you girls here, I did not start playing tournaments until I was an adult. So I was actually in graduate school when I started playing tournaments. So that's a huge benefit that you have, because another way, in addition to doing tactics and studying and all of that, the other way to see yourself progress is playing tournaments on a regular basis and going over those games with either your coach or a stronger player, because you can learn from your games. Okay, yes. So I started playing when I was in 7th grade. Yvonne?
No, she's asking who taught you how to play chess.
Oh, who taught me how to play chess? So I actually learned from my best friend in junior high school. She actually at the time was a tournament player. I didn't even know it until we were adults. She actually taught me how to play. And then from there, I taught my sister how to play, and I used to play with my sisters. I saw a number of you click that you learned from your family members. So by the time it was all said and done, I was playing with my brothers, my father, and my sister, but my best friend taught me how to play. Good question.
I just wanted to ask one thing to Adia. How many times have you visited Kenya?
Well, I actually started visiting as an adult. So I visited only a handful of times. Not as many as I would love to, just because of work schedule and just, everything else. But I've only played in Kenya once, because usually my visits have been mainly focused with family, and sometimes way out in the island, So usually when I've played, it's been when I've been in Nairobi.
Adia, what is your FIDE rating?
Yeah, so USCF, I have reached a level of expert level in USCF, and FIDE, my rating, I don't remember my exact rating, but it's like A player. So A player expert would be equivalent. USCF is usually off by about 100 points. So yeah. And I will say, this was achieved within a time span of just less than 6 months. So when I started playing and training, I basically trained myself, and with going over tactics and puzzles and games, drills, and all of that, and was able to rise from 1400 to 1900 something within a period of about 5 to 6 months. But it was putting in a lot of hours of work, a lot of hours of looking at videos, doing puzzles, going over games.
Yeah. So it's great to see you guys here. And by the way, some people, Bernice messaged me that her internet wasn't that stable today. We actually do record the sessions. I don't always make a video out of them. It kind of depends on the content, but we can give you a link that should at least work for the next few weeks if you want to review it. So I'll send that to Judith and she can pass it on. If Bernice missed some of the positions. So yeah, Elizabeth, one more question from you.
Which position do you like, open or closed? Yeah,
That's a really good question. I actually like both positions, but I love closed positions. I really love that boa constrictor type of style of play where you really restrict your opponent and take away options from them. So I really enjoy playing closed positions, but I like open positions as well, because you can really find some nice attacking ideas in open positions. Good question, Elizabeth. Good question.
That's a great question. Elizabeth, I'm going to take a wild guess and say you prefer open positions. Is that right?
that's right.
Yeah. She loves the tactics and the checkmate. So.
I think, Jennifer, as we move on, it will be interesting to know the openings that the girls like to play, so that also, they can get a little bit more tips, as we move on. Because I think, it's interesting to see that there are those who are stronger in one opening and they prefer another opening. But it will be of your interest to know what kind of players and what openings they like to use in their games. Just an
That's a
observation.
great idea to do like an opening class and find out what everybody plays and talk about it. That's a really good idea. Maybe we can do that for the next Kenya only session. I think it's good for this size of class, like 20 people, because we can really talk to everyone. So yeah, let's try to do that next time. I think that will be really fun. But till then, Adia, I think that you've been so generous with your time and your lesson here. I really enjoyed the game myself and watching it.
Very nice. Yes, thank you, girls. I really had a wonderful time talking with all of you, hearing all of your creative ideas, and look forward to seeing you guys some more over the chessboard.
Kwaheri, bye.
Bye. Bye. Thanks for teaching us the new lesson.
Bye. Thank
You're
you for
welcome.
teaching us.